I imagined I told my assistant something, and somehow it didn't actually happen.
Welcome back to another amazing episode of the Perfect RIA podcast. I'm your co-host, Micah, and with me, as usual, the legendary Matthew Jarvis. What's going on, bud?
Oh, Micah, just living the dream here in Las Vegas. It's the warm time of year, we'll call that.
Really?
I think it's triple digits every day. It's warm, and this is first world problems. Our pool is now the hot temperature of your hot tub. So we have the world's largest hot tub. You can only use it at night because it's the only time that it feels good, because during the day it's pretty darn hot. First world problems.
So you're going to get an AC unit for your hot tub. I'm sorry, for your pool. Is that what I heard?
People do that. Yeah, they get coolers for their pool in the desert. Yeah, more so in the south where it's humid because the humidity really adds up. But even here, it's a thing. So
there you go. Such the problems. We have not had that issue yet in Alaska. But I'll let you know. So the hot tub is still a nice thing here.
Let me know. Well, if I do decide I need a cooler or anything else, you can bet that I'm just going to have my assistant take care of that, right? And that's actually, first world problems aside, it's something we want to talk about today is delegation, especially with our partners at Belay. We've been talking more about delegation, but we've also heard from advisors that said, hey, I got an assistant in my office, virtual, wherever, and things didn't all start happening. Like I imagined in my mind that I would get an assistant and all of my problems would go away and I would be laying by the pool with somebody feeding me peeled grapes all afternoon, and that did not happen.
Yeah, exactly right. We have this illusion in our mind. Maybe we could even talk about some of that magic thinking that happens about, the assistants that we see maybe in TV that says, oh my gosh, this person hired it, and then they were absolutely horrible. And like 30 minutes later, they were this magical assistant that took care of everything. And it was just so amazing that it was done. And that's the assistant that I want. And the reality is you're getting the first assistant. You're not getting the second assistant. And a lot of it has to do is less on that particular person and a lot more on you on the leadership side. And this is a really hard thing to embrace, taking this a lot from Jocko, right? Everything is your fault. Stephen Jarvis at the CPA doesn't like that. He's like, no, Mike, it's your responsibility. I'm like, wordsmith this however you want. It's your fault it didn't happen. So, this is what you have to push into a little bit and saying, if your team is not delivering, whether it's a virtual assistant, whether it's a full-time team members, etc., what have you done to cause this issue? And I know, Jarvis, one of the mistakes that I made early on in delegation was when I delegated a task, I thought someone would get it done quicker and better than I would.
Mm-hmm. Despite you having had years of experience on that task, despite you having, this is really a critical one, you have a clear image or a clear-ish image in your mind of what that will look like. And the delegation looked like a one-liner, like, hey, would you take care of this thing? Well, by when? What's the budget? How much time should I spend on it? What if I run into an obstacle? Who should I ask for that? What does the finished product look like, right? There's this expression in, I think it's in software, but it really applies to everything, garbage in, garbage out. If I do a poor job delegating, there's just really no chance I'm not going to get poor work back. Now, there may be a 1 in a million assistant out there who really crushes that. It's probably not the person on your payroll, right? Like maybe there's somebody that they're charging $200,000 a year to be an executive assistant and they can think 10 steps ahead of you. Maybe that exists. For most people, not so much.
I don't think so. I've met those people, but not all of them, clearly. So
sure.
Yes, maybe that magical, Iron Man, Tony Sharp example of assistant comes in there, which Pepper Potts, which does everything amazingly and perfect. But I don't think so. I think a lot of this is work and effort, just like anything else in your practice. Like when you start a marketing program, it says, oh my gosh, as soon as I get on Facebook, everyone's going to flock to me. Well, that didn't work. As soon as I get my CFP, everyone's going to flock to me. Well, that didn't work. It's not about doing those things. It's about the work and energy you put into it, which is really going to deliver. So that's what we need to talk about today is growing your team. Okay, you could ask why. That's a fair question. Let's assume we're past that why question just yet. And we're into all right, how do I implement this? And we can talk about this, Jarvis, from a lot of mistakes that we've made along the way, but also some successes. And what do we have things that work well now?
Yeah, let's use an example of a success and a mistake when you're going to be out of the office, right? So this is a time where you really see how your team's doing is if you're gone for an extended period of time, a week, 2 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever the case may be. One time I was gone out of the office, Micah, and I had mentioned to Colleen, and these words are specific, if you have a chance while I'm gone, would you take a look at X? Those were my words, and those words are specific because when I came back, in my mind, X was going to be done.
Yes.
And it wasn't done. And at that time, and this is on me, I was very upset by that. In fact, I was talking to my coach and I said, hey, I don't know what's going on with Colleen here. I told her to do this thing. He says, well, hang on, let's rewind it. What exactly did you say? And so I repeated it again. Hey, Colleen, while I'm gone, if you have a chance, would you please take a look at X? So he says, okay, you told her this, right? Did she, when she had a chance, take a look at it? Well, yes, she did. Okay, so she did exactly what it is you said to do. Well, yeah, I suppose, but in my mind, I wanted it to be completed. Okay, but you didn't say that. You didn't say have this completed and here's what complete looks like. You said when you have a chance, take a look at it. So a lot of times, Mike, right. And this example always stands out to me. We think in our mind we have one expectation. We communicate a totally different expectation. And by the way, this one already had a miracle of calling heard what I thought I was saying. Right? There's this whole other thing about when you say something one way and somebody doesn't even hear what you say, they don't understand what you mean. That's a whole other communication thing. Are we talking about marriage here? Are we still talking about?
I was like, I think we made a left turn. Where did that happen? Well, on that note, Jarvis, though, this is super, super important to think about that communication side. And one of the things, I'm not going to do the quote justice, so I won't even try, but sometimes we try to be nice and really we're being cruel. And what do I mean by that? It is not nice to create an ambiguous statement that your team members cannot understand what you're actually requesting. You need to be crystal clear. So quit putting all the niceties in it. Hey, if you had some time, I know you're really busy, but maybe if you could take a look at this, that would be fantastic. Okay, well, you're going to get just exactly what you asked for. It says versus the conversation being, hey, great news. When I come back, these are the things that I expect you have you completed. You're giving to your team member in advance of you leaving, not the day of you leaving, a week plus in advance of you leaving. Mm-hmm. So they have time to review that list. They have time to ask you any follow-up questions. And you have set a very clear outline on the time commitment you expect them to do, how long it should take, especially for new team members. You know, you need to put time commitments on how long it should take and what the outcome should look like. And Jarvis, like I say, I'm guilty of this one, not communicating what the outcome should look like. Then I'm surprised when the team made a left-hand turn, in my opinion. I'm like, where in the heck did you come up with this? Then it was like, aha, my instructions weren't clear on what it should be.
A couple things that have helped us with this, Micah, is doing Firefly recording of those meetings, which I go back and forth on a little bit because half the time nobody goes back and listens to them. So that's kind of a waste. But when we do, it helps me hold accountable to your point. Did I kind of hem-haw around the thing or was I very specific? Also gives the team the opportunity to go back. Now, what did Matt say about this? Something else that's important, Micah, that you mentioned about giving a very specific outcome. This is specifically what I want and by when. Is giving them safety valves, right? Hey, if you get stuck, or another one is, would you take this to 80% and then bring it to me? Take it to 80% and then bring it to me and I'll redirect you. Then we'll take it another 80% and redirect you, et cetera, right? So we want to make sure that they have safety valves, but again, that we've given clear communications. And I'm often guilty of this, Micah, that I just kind of steamroll through it. They have 10 things on my list and let me run through them really quick. All right, I got to go, click. They haven't had a chance to say, like, wait, I need some more clarification here. What did you mean by this?
Yeah, we'll get into that in just a second, too, when we talk about team meetings and kind of how to run those for success. But, Jarvis, you brought up that solid point, though, right, about we can get into this, and then we need to give the team time to do a task and come back to us. But, Jarvis, I'd love to know your thoughts on this. I am not a fan of asking the team how long things should take. I'm a bigger fan of giving a range and allowing for pushback, or, you know, if they say, hey, I'm having a priorities issue, you said to get X done, I'm still working on Y, because I'm very guilty of thinking everything else is done and you're doing nothing else, therefore you should just be doing this. And our listeners are probably like, how could you think that? I don't know, I just do, right? I'm like, well, how do you not have everything done that I've magically assigned 12 seconds ago, right? It just is. And so my team knows that. And so they can push back on me in the correct manner of saying, hey, Mike, I need some help with my priorities. Which of these tasks are more important that I can make sure get done first? And then I can work with them on that. But I never want to hear my team come back with a no. You got to lead with a yes, right? They're not going to come back and says, no, I don't have time for that. Well, that's a crap answer. Probably because you're just making it up and you don't really want to work. I mean, that's immediately where my thought goes to.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I agree because, of course, Parkinson's law is in effect for everyone, not just the listeners of this podcast, right? It's for our team members, for everyone. And so we want to help set parameters. And it's good to just set sort of a budget of time, if you will. Hey, spend about 2 hours on this thing. And then let me know where you get, or go ahead and spend a day working on this thing and then let me know where you get. That's going to give you a check-in point, let them make progress. Sometimes things get out of hand. For example, Zach, my virtual assistant through Belay, I had asked him to find an appointment for me to get our passports renewed, which is apparently a Herculean task that one wouldn't imagine. So I told Zach, hey, it's really important that we get these scheduled. Top priority, I need to get my passports renewed because I'm heading to London in the fall to speak at the CISI conference, bringing the family with me. So I get back with Zach the following week. He says, Matt, I tried. I ended up spending 5 hours trying to find a passport appointment. And he had a list, to his credit, Mike, he had a list of dozens of places he had checked. And his mind, I had told him, hey, this is top priority, this is very important. So he kept, to his credit, working down that path. Now, had I said, and this back to our point, Zach, this is really high priority, but I know it's a pain. If you spend an hour or two and you're not making progress, reach back out to me because we need to circle back around. And again, this is no fault of Zach's because I had said top priority, but I didn't put any other parameters than top priority.
So a thing to think about this is when you're creating this, what is your template for creating tasks and where do these tasks go? Is it a verbal task? Is it a voicemail? Is it a text message? Is it an IM? What about an email, right? Or what about Siri dictation? All of these things are different ways that you can communicate, which have different result levels. And so this is really, really important to go back to. How are you delegating tasks? Now, the system has to work for me in the delegation, right? I'm not going to. So if I need a team member that says, hey, Mike, I need you to write out the task. And I need you to write out a lengthy description of everything you need me to do. And I don't really want to talk to you. I need you to write everything out. The answer to that is no. I'm sure you're a great person. Go work somewhere else. That's not going to work for me. So it has to work for me. And it has to work for the team member is the combination. Jarvis, I don't know about for you, but for me, I do no matter how I delegate my tasks, the number one responsibility of my assistant is to put all of those tasks on our check-in sheet in the format that we can review them. So it has the name of it, it has a description, who was assigned by, when it was assigned, right, and any of their notes that are in there, and when is it expected to get done by. And so now all of a sudden I got this nice little grid that all of my tasks are there that I can look at and say what's a priority and not. But again, their top priority is getting everything I've delegated to them onto that list. But if I find a way that I keep sending text messages for discussion and it doesn't get on the list, maybe I need to quit sending text messages.
Yeah, I was going to ask, Micah, so with your assistant, especially for personal tasks or things around the office, whatever the case may be, what medium are you using to communicate that?
Yeah, well, right now you're looking at my personal assistant. And so I graduated at my previous assistant. So Tori was my assistant for a long time. She got promoted, which is fantastic. We hired another assistant. Didn't work out. So I'm assistant less at the time and kind of going through that pain point of saying, all right, do I really want to rehire for another assistant? And I know I'm supposed to, and I know I should, and I know it's a better option, right? But I just kind of graduated this one and I don't really want to go through the rehiring pain. So I'm with you. For those that are out there, they're saying, I don't want to go through this pain. I don't want to train and educate someone. I don't want to do it. I get that. And I'm quickly coming to my end of things that are piling up that I'm having to do that need to get done, that someone else should be doing, that I'm like, this is why I need to get an assistant.
I'm grinning here because I'm imagining, Micah, you as your own personal assistant, which is what you're doing right now. Trisha, who was on the episode several months ago, she said, hey, you either have an assistant or you are the assistant. But I'm just imagining those performance evaluations between Micah and Micah. It's got to be pretty intense.
Well, I got to say, my tasks that I need to get done. So there's that.
Yeah.
Then all the other stuff that I want. My credit card bill is dramatically less, by the way, because I'm not delegating for other people to go buy me all this other stuff. So I'm spending less money. So there's a pro.
We've so for our internal, for our JFS team, we do everything through OneNote, which you could do it through a doc, whatever the case may be. And it's a really simple format. And for members of the Backstage Pass and Invictus, we can get a copy of that in there. But it's just initials from to initials. So it says like MJ to CM. Here's specifically what I need. So I try to communicate that through there versus I really try to limit the number of messages I send. Same with Zach, my virtual assistant through Belay. We have a spreadsheet we work off of. It has columns, Micah, similar to you illustrated. What's the priority? What's the item? What's the next step? When's the deadline? We have it broken into high priorities and low priorities. But I try to avoid, unless I'm traveling or it's something urgent, I try to avoid just pinging people because, again, it's very truncated. It's often interrupts whatever they're doing, and it doesn't seem to generate very good results. So unless it's like, hey, I'm in the airport and my flight got canceled and I need to find a hotel here in town, please get on that. I really want to do it through whatever system we've established. And Micah, to your point, one that works for you.
Yeah, and I'm really bad about that one. So that's the reason I got to keep going back at one of our first meetings when I was having my assistant or with Victoria when I was working with her is going back through my messages and just saying, hey, did all of these things get put in as a task? It would be more effective if I stopped and put the time and kind of filled out the task form. And I don't, but then things drop through the cracks, which kind of brings us to, two of the problems that you have when you're hiring team members, Jarvis, is number one, there's process problems, and number two, there's people problems. Yeah. And those are the only two problems you really have. And so when, not if, when something doesn't go well, when you delegated it, you got to step back and say, hey, is this a process problem or is it a people problem? Well, if it's a people problem, then it's time that we need to update, someone's resume, and it's time for them to go find their greater good, which is what we recently had to do. And it's not that this was a bad person. We were putting them in a role that they were not going to succeed in. That's not fair. That's not good for that person. That's not good for the team. So it's like, nope, this person needs to go on and be in a role that they can succeed on. So we got to give them that opportunity. And so there's a people problem, but then a process problem is just this. I'm sending emails, chats, voicemail, whatever, and I'm not being respectful of my team members' time. I'm not being respectful of deadlines. I'm not reviewing the timelines. Okay, this is not a people problem. This is a process problem that you have, and you have to create a process that your team can be successful in.
Or that the people problem is the one people that you're not going to fire yourself.
Well, sure. Yes. But I was like, well, since we're not doing that one, we got to fix that with a process.
That's a different episode. Yeah. And it's easy to fall back. I know for me as well to say, hey, I don't want to do that. I want to just be able to send random texts. I want to just be able to bark orders. And I'd love to do that. And it doesn't work. And same with if I'm being honest, I'd probably rather not do Surge, right? Surge is a lot of work. When I'm in Surge, it's a ton of work. But the advice, same with value adds. Value adds are a lot of work, right? Delivering massive value is a lot of work. But the advisor I want to be, the experience I want to create for clients and my team requires this of me. And so I can't say that, hey, I want to have this great, well-functioning team and then I don't lead them effectively. I just can't have those both. So I can say, hey, I want to have a well-functioning team and I'm willing to pay that price, or I'm just not going to, and I'll expect that there's going to be turnover and things won't get done and things will fall between the cracks. So you've got to pick, what kind of practice do you want? What kind of life do you want to live? And are you willing to make those sacrifices?
Yeah, that's really, really important to be thinking about, right? How do you set these things up and how do you do it? Now, Jarvis, one level that I am not to, that sometimes I think about, I'm like, oh, that's so much work. I don't want to do that, is what if you could walk into your team meetings every time like they were a client meeting, like you were meeting with your ideal client. You were as prepared as you meet with your clients. You're as set up, you're as excited, you're running the room, you're doing all of these things just as if you were doing it with a client. You could do it with every team member.
Oh boy, that's a good one. I'll confess that last week I missed a team meeting with short notice because something else had come up. And so I just messaged the team and I said, hey, you guys will be fine without me. I've got another priority. Well, let's think about the message that sends. Right? I would never do that again. I could never text a client, hey, listen, I'll send you the notes. Let me know how it goes without me. Right. So
actually, can we just have a 30-second call? I know exactly what you need to do. I don't need to hear your story. Just go do these things.
Yeah. Can we just cut to the chase? Let's not small talk this time. Let's just talk about what's on my mind. Yeah. That's a really good mindset. Right. And it's a really good mindset.
So I'm going to pick on you on that one since you brought it up. It's that aspect, right? That's a very clear message that team meetings are not important. Therefore, anything else can trump that. Okay, so what message are you setting for the rest of your team? As our team grows, and now we have 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. We were on a team-wide meeting just with all the companies that were kind of running, and we had almost 30 people on that call. It was just kind of amazing, right? And that's aside from the other companies that we are. So that's just this one little set of them. There's 30 people there, and then all of a sudden you're not showing up for meetings. You're showing up late for meetings. You're not showing up professional for meetings. What message are you sending to the rest of your team members as you're running this, right? It's either that they're not important or the company's not important. Well, if the company's not important and taking care of clients isn't important, well, okay, then they're going to show up late. Then they're going to show up casual. Then they're not going to be prepared for these meetings, right? You are setting the precedent of how these meetings should be set up and how they should be ran every single time you were there or not there.
Yeah, it does. There's this interesting concept in the book, I think it's called Strengths to Strengths that I'm reading right now. It talks about objectifying success. And it also talks about that we a lot of times can objectify team members that they're just job doers, right? That they're just here to do that task. And I forget that, hey, these are still people with concerns and goals and insecurities and doubts, and they want to be acknowledged for what they do. And to your point, Micah, if you say or imply that this work is not important, it's not important enough for me to show up, it's not important for me to be prepared, you're telling this human being, hey, what you do is not important. And then we're surprised when they don't think it's important, right? And so these are not just AI bots, right? They're real people. And they've got to be treated not just with respect, but they need to be cultivated. And it's something I've got to remind myself about all the time.
Yeah, and cultivating isn't being overly nice. And I think in our culture, sometimes we push way too much on that is people's feelings and their emotions and kind of how they're setting up. No, cultivating this and helping them and really being kind to them is clarity, right? Being super clear on the expectations in which you expect them to make. And if they don't make those expectations, what are the consequences of those actions? That's another thing we kind of see with advisors, Jarvis, from time to time. Luckily, we don't run into it very often in our offices, but it is this aspect that says, okay, what if you delegate something? I'm going to ask you, you delegate something to a team member, an assistant, and they habitually do not, well, the first time they don't get it done by the deadline. What do you do?
Yeah, and this goes back to, is this a people problem or a process problem? So thankfully right now we have really good teams of great people. And so I always want to go first to this was a process issue. That needs to be my first assumption, right? Because my default gut reaction is somebody is an idiot. That's sort of like my gut. So I need to go to the process. All right, how did I explain this? Where was the task in place? Why would this person have not done this task, right? Again, unless this is a people, they're being malicious or something like that. Some kind of process broke down. What was that process? Now, that's where we need to sit down together, myself and whomever the issue was, and say, all right, let's rewind this clock. How did we get to this spot where what we communicated didn't get done? And then it wasn't communicated clearly. I didn't have time to do it. I didn't understand the priority of it. That's where we can kind of take a step back and peel back those layers and see where it went wrong. If it happened, well, here's an interesting example, Micah. We had an issue. We've talked about this with our prospect process. And Colleen's shared this story, so I don't want to feel like I'm singling her out. She would, when prospects would call in, I would ask her to figure out about how much money they had. And then a prospect would call, and she didn't know. The next, I would say, hey, you need to do this. And we would practice scripts and and we would try. And again, Micah, Colleen would not ask them how much money they have. And I'm starting to get pretty upset about this. Hey, listen, I told you to do this. I did scripts. We practiced. We did all these things. And you're not doing it. Like in my mind, it was bordering on insubordination. Like we were going to have a big problem. And of course, your mind goes to this extreme scenario. Like, well, where else does she not, And so I finally, in talking to a coach and one, I finally said, hey, Colleen, wow, help me understand. Like, why doesn't this happen? And she says, Matthew, I just got to tell you, like, it hurts my soul to ask somebody. I grew up really poor and I hated talking about money, and it really like hurts my soul to ask somebody how much money they have. Oh, okay. So now we need to find a new process. Yes. In this case, we moved the process to the website. The website says, hey, here are the criteria for working with us. Colleen, would you be comfortable asking people if they reviewed the website and if they meet the criteria? She says, oh, I would love to do that. And she does in every single call. Oh, I'm so glad you called. Matthew would love to meet with you. Have you reviewed our website? You haven't. You know what? I'll sit with you right now. Could you pull that up? How does that criteria look? Does it look like something that sounds like you? It does. Perfect. Right. And so that was a process of finding a different process. But Mike, it is sometimes a people thing. And then we just can't tolerate that.
Yeah, so you brought up really good things, right? I want to pull on some of those.
Please.
Number one, you got to create an environment where the team can come to you when they need help. And so this is the aspect that I want to support my team. Now, you cannot take their job away from them, right? Saying, I'm overworked, I have too much tasks. You can't take those tasks back. Once you delegate it, they got to be gone, right? And so, because what happens is reverse delegation starts happening, right? Because just like kids, team members are going to push the boundaries and see where they are. It's just like kids, like all people, I push the boundaries. I want to see where they're at. Is that a real line or is that a fake line? Let's go right up to it and find out what happens. And so we're going to see those types of behaviors. And so we got to be super clear with team members about saying, hey, these are the boundaries for success. But be open to say, hey, I have some difficulties. I have some problems with this. Okay, great. Well, what is it? Is it something we can work through? Because Jarvis, it was a borderline termination issue for you, whereas it was a slight pivot in speech and it was 100% fixed. Yeah. And Colleen's a great team member, and you're super glad to have her. So all of these wonderful things that are there, but it was really noticing those. So one, creating that culture where you can talk about it is important. The other part of it, whenever I go into these and a team member hasn't gotten something done, and I'm going to say first defense kind of thing, I'm going to be like, hey, in my mind, this was clear on what needed to happen. Clearly, I failed to communicate what took place. I'd really like to get your feedback on what went wrong. Where did you get off path? Where could I have helped you more along the way to make this successful? And Jarvis, what I'm looking for is their language. What I'm looking for here is, are they taking responsibility or are they blaming me? Well, you didn't tell me this and you didn't say this and now you changed your mind in this and now it's this, this is drama. This is a people problem, right? So someone's going to have an opportunity to update the resume. If they come back and say, Micah, I didn't understand how this came together. I missed that this was important. This is where I failed. This is how I'm going to pick it up and do better next time. They're taking ownership. Okay, that's a good person. Now I can work on the process with that person in order to make sure it succeed. If I start seeing blame shifting taking place in there, boom, we're out.
Yeah.
Right? Because I cannot work in that environment. Correction. I am choosing not to work in that environment because I need everyone coming to the table, owning and taking responsibility for what they're doing.
Yeah, we've all got to bring ownership to the table. It's funny, Micah, the process things that seem like it's an insurmountable problem and we're relying on willpower. So this is where we go wrong a lot of times. Like, well, hey, people should, or we should have enough willpower. A silly example from my own home is there was a constant debate in our home about where certain items should be put away. So when you were unloading the dishwasher, where should the spatulas go or something like that? And they were ending up in different places. And this became a source of a lot of contention between my teenagers. I didn't really care. And so there was a lot of like, well, hey, Calvin should know or Alice should know. So I said, great, a quick family meeting where let's all agree where these need to go. And then let's put a label where spatulas need to go, right? So everybody knows versus this like, hey, you should remember this. No, I want to have a process that's reliable. If I have good people, or in the case of my family, people that I get to live with forever or a long time at least, I want to go back to a process.
Extended that subsistence program
I'll know
for a long time.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But where can we, if we have dictations not being done correctly, great. This is something you and I both did. Let's make a template for dictations. If files aren't being named correctly or consistently, let's have a hard card on everyone's desk until we all get in the habit of that, right? So if we're relying on people's memories are not reliable for that. And that's where we say, hey, we need to shortcut this. If we're not getting the results we want, let's at first try that process. Though, Micah, to your point, there are these real red flags of, hey, if you're passing blame, if you're attacking other team members, if you're bringing any kind of drama, that's not a process issue, that's a people issue.
And this is really important when you're hiring people, right? Now, no one likes to go through the hiring process. So here's the problem. And this happened to me on my last assistant, is we saw some red flags and I passed by those because I was so tired of the hiring process. I was like, dang it, I'm just going to muster through this and we'll fix it later on. And those little issues became big issues. So you got to have really clear criteria when you're working with team members. What are deal breakers? And what are things that we need to invest a little bit more education with our team members, right? For example, a deal breaker is not taking responsibility, lying or hiding things. Yep. Those are deal breakers, and my team knows them. It says if you make a mistake and you own it and you come up and says, I cannot believe I did this. And then that happened recently in the office, right? Sure. And the team member just owned it. It's like, okay, great. We have an education opportunity. Let's fix it. And then let's step back and say, hey, how do we prevent this going forward? I can work with that all day long, Jarvis.
All day.
Someone tries to sweep it under the rug and I find it later that they hit it. Ooh, we have a problem. This is a trust issue. This hits to my core right here. That person's gone. So again, it's an integrity. It's an ownership. It's a trust thing, right? If we have those characteristics and a capability thing, do we have a basic set of capabilities? Almost everything else can be educated in there. And sometimes it's the right seats in the wrong, it's the right bus in the wrong seats or however that is, right? Because you got to move people around to get them in the right spots. I talked to Victoria. She's a fantastic relationship manager. She does not do a great job of number analytics. That's just not her thing. And for too long, we're asking her to put some numbers together that we thought RM should be on top of. But you know what? She could cold call prospects all day long and get them booked, but she can't do spreadsheets. Now, this isn't negative on Victoria. I got other team members that are fantastic on spreadsheets that will not pick up the phone and cold call anyone, right? So it's just the team effort of bringing all of us together in this side of it. So again, I have a great person, had to pivot a little bit job responsibilities and make sure we're following a solid process of success.
Boy, I love it. I love it. Well, speaking of processes of success, Micah, this podcast is all about taking action because just like your team, right, it's only the things that get accomplished that count. So we have several action items for you this week because we're rolling into Surge in just a few weeks. We want to make sure that you're really getting things rocking and rolling. First one is in about 2 weeks, the end of September, Micah, you and I are going to be here in Las Vegas for the Retirement Tax Services Summit. There's still virtual seats available for that. Would love to see you join us. If you happen to be in Vegas, look us up. We're going to be having a lot of fun there. So really excited to be attending the Retirement Tax Services Tax Summit in just 2 weeks.
I think it's going to be fantastic. Action item number 2 is set up a list of all the things that you're doing, right? Write a list of all those things and then put a dot, put a star, put something next to it. If someone else other than you could be doing this, right? And don't say, oh, it's going to take a lot of work done. No. What are all of the things that you're doing and could someone else take this over? This is a bit daunting because we're going to mentally justify why we should be doing so much if you're not used to delegation, but that's a really important thing to do. It's a great next step in taking to saying, all right, what are things I can start getting off my plate?
Yeah, I'd say a second half to that action item, Micah, is once you've got that list, right? So you got the list of things that you need to do. You've marked the things that could possibly be delegated. An example of that, you and I, Mike, are planning a trip in February, and we wanted to go meet up with Bobby Orr, the legendary stunt driver. And so I had Zach, my Belay virtual assistant, call around, find out when he was available, check our calendars, reconcile that. But take that list and then reach out, text the letters RIA to 55123 to get Belay's ebook on virtual assistants. Get a call with Teresa, who's our sales representative there, and have her walk through that list with you and have her tell you, like, hey, that could be delegated, or you know what, you're so far off base. That's no good. You can't paint your house on there. That's not going to happen, right? So, but text RIA to 55123 and then work with them and say, hey, is this in fact things that I can delegate, or am I way off base here?
I love it. Jarvis, the other thing I want to add on there, if we didn't spend too much time talking about today that was on the list, so it'll have to be a future podcast, is team training. What are you doing to be proactive with your team and help in training? If
you're curious about what it's like to be a member of Invictus and Backstage Pass, join us a month from today, October 18th. We'll be doing our Nation Power session. Going to be a great opportunity to learn from Micah and myself on what it takes to move from the slow lane to the very fast lane.
Love it. Jarvis, as always, it's a blast. And until next time, happy planning.
Happy planning.
Information designed to change lives. Financial planning can make you thrive. Start today, don't think twice.